The Dominion's reach. For 4,000 years, the Zyrak Dominion had known only victory. Their empire stretched across 17 star systems, built on the bones of civilizations that had dared to resist. The Kelvari had resisted, their homeworld was now a mining colony. The Theshan Confederacy had resisted, their species existed only in genetic archives. The More-Than had resisted, no one remembered what the More-Than had looked like. War Chief Korix stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the Burning Mandate, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly below. His scales, deep crimson from decades of combat radiation, caught the light of this system's unremarkable yellow star. Tactical assessment, he rumbled. His second, a younger warrior named Thres, pulled up the holographic display. Primitive electromagnetic communications. Chemical propulsion rockets. No unified planetary government. They call themselves humanity. Korix's mandibles clicked with amusement. Another species that hasn't learned to speak with one voice. How do they expect to negotiate surrender? They have nuclear weapons, War Chief. Thousands of them. Pointed at each other, I assume? Yes, War Chief. The bridge crew shared rattling laughs. Nuclear weapons. The Zyrak had moved past such crude instruments 3,000 years ago. These humans were still playing with fire while the Dominion commanded the fundamental forces of the universe. Standard subjugation protocol, Korix ordered. Destroy their orbital installations, then demand unconditional surrender. If they refuse, glass their largest population center and ask again. The fleet, 47 warships, each capable of rendering a continent uninhabitable, began its descent toward the third planet from the sun. They expected resistance. They expected fear. They did not expect silence. Chapter 1. Detection. 14 months earlier. Location. Redacted, United Nations Deep Space Monitoring Station. Dr. Sarah Chen had been staring at the same data for 6 hours. The coffee in her mug had gone cold twice. She'd refilled it twice. Now it sat forgotten, a brown ring forming on the classified documents beneath it. Run it again, she said. We've run it 11 times, her colleague, Dr. James Okonkwo, replied. His voice was patient but tired. The results don't change. Then explain to me how a gravitational wave signature that size appears in deep space, moves in a straight line and then stops. James leaned back in his chair. I can't. That's the problem. The facility around them hummed with the quiet efficiency of a place that officially didn't exist. Buried half a kilometer beneath the Nevada desert, the monitoring station had been built after the Roswell incident, not because of what they'd found there, but because of what they'd subsequently detected. Signals. Not radio signals, those would have been too easy. No, these were gravitational ripples, the kind caused by objects moving at speeds that violated everything humanity thought it knew about physics. For 70 years the station had tracked them, mapped their patterns, tried to understand what was out there. And now something was coming. Get me Director Morrison, Sarah said. It's 3 in the morning. Get me Director Morrison. James picked up the secure phone. 20 minutes later, a man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many classified briefings stood beside them, studying the data. How long? He asked. Based on the trajectory and speed? Sarah pulled up a projection. 14 months. Maybe less if they accelerate. The signature matches previous detections. Multiple objects traveling in formation. A fleet director. Someone is sending a fleet to Earth. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone, not the facility phone but a personal device that looked decades out of date. This is Morrison, he said into it. Authorization code Prometheus 7. We have a situation black. Repeat, situation black. Sarah watched him, her heart pounding. What happens now? Morrison looked at her. For the first time since she'd known him, he smiled. Now we find out if 60 years of preparation was enough. Chapter 2, The Horizon. Location, redacted, Lunar Far Side Construction Facility. Admiral Helena Vasquez had never believed in miracles. She believed in preparation, in discipline, in the cold logic of tactical superiority. Miracles were for people who hadn't done the math. Standing in the observation gallery of humanity's most classified facility, watching the ship that would either save or doom her species, she ran the math again. The TNS Horizon floated in the construction bay like a sleeping predator. Unlike the vessels of other galactic civilizations, which she'd studied for decades through intercepted signals and recovered wreckage, the Horizon had no elegant lines, no ceremonial flourishes, no concessions to aesthetics. It was a weapon. 1,500 meters of layered armor, quantum-silent engines, and weapon systems that humanity had spent half a century reverse engineering from debris that had fallen to Earth over the millennia. The ship had no windows, optical sensors were more efficient. No running lights, they would only reveal its position. No communications array visible to external scanners, the horizon spoke only when it chose to. Status report, Helena said. Commander David Park, her tactical officer, stepped forward. All systems at 97% operational capacity. The gravitational disruptors passed final testing yesterday. The null shields are. The shields won't matter. Park paused. Ma'am? Their weapons will cut through our shields like tissue paper. Every analysis we've done on recovered alien technology confirms it. Their energy output is orders of magnitude beyond ours. Then how? We don't let them hit us. Helena turned from the viewport. The horizon isn't designed to take punishment, Commander. It's designed to dish it out and disappear before they can respond. We have one advantage over whoever is coming. They don't know we exist. She walked toward the command center, her boots echoing on the metal floor. Every spacefaring civilization we've detected operates on the same principle. Overwhelming force. Their ships are designed to intimidate, to broadcast power. They announce their presence because they've never faced an enemy who could match them. She stopped at the central holodable, where a tactical display showed the approaching alien fleet. Humanity has been fighting itself for 10,000 years. We've learned something these aliens never had to, how to survive against a superior enemy. You don't match their force. You don't challenge their power. You find their weakness and you exploit it. Park studied the display. What's their weakness? Helena zoomed in on the lead ship of the alien fleet. Their confidence. The New Order. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy had a new word. It spread through trade routes and diplomatic channels, whispered in the halls of ancient empires and shouted in the markets of frontier worlds. A word that had no direct translation in most languages because the concept it described had never existed before. Horizon. To the Zyrak it meant defeat, their first in 4,000 years. To the Theshan remnants still scattered across refugee stations, it meant hope. To the more than survivors hiding in the galactic rim, it meant that perhaps their extinction had not been inevitable after all. To humanity it meant something simpler: we are not alone and we are not afraid. But fear, Admiral Helena Vasquez had learned, was a complicated thing. The galaxy feared humanity now, and fear could be useful. Fear could prevent wars. Fear could open doors that would otherwise remain closed. Fear could also make enemies. Chapter 1, The Embassy. Neutral Station Kovaris, 7. Galactic Diplomatic Concord Territory. Ambassador Michael Torres had spent 30 years in the diplomatic corps. He had negotiated hostage releases in war zones, brokered peace agreements between nations that had been killing each other for centuries, and once talked a military junta out of executing a planeload of journalists through sheer force of personality. None of it had prepared him for this. The station's central concourse stretched before him like a cathedral built by fever dreams. Gravity shifted in subtle waves as different sections catered to different species' needs. Bioluminescent panels pulsed with colors beyond human visual range. He'd been told his translator implant would interpret them as emotional context, but so far all he'd felt was vaguely nauseated. Ambassador Torres. His aide, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chin, the same Dr. Chin who had first detected the Zyrak fleet, now reassigned to the diplomatic mission, fell into step beside him. The Concord representatives are ready. How many species? 47 confirmed attendees. Another 60 observing remotely. And their disposition? Sarah hesitated. Mixed. The Zyrak delegation is subdued. The species they've conquered over the millennia are considerably more enthusiastic about our presence. But there's a third faction. Let me guess. Species who've never been conquered and don't appreciate a new power upsetting the balance. The Velthari hegemony primarily. They've controlled the galactic core for longer than the Zyrak have existed. They're not hostile but they're watching. Torres adjusted his collar. The suit he wore was deliberately plain, dark fabric, minimal ornamentation. Humanity's message to the galaxy would begin with aesthetics. We are not here to impress you. We are here to talk. Then let's give them something to watch. The Concord chamber was designed to intimidate. Torres recognized the psychology immediately. The vaulted ceilings that made individuals feel small, the circular seating arrangement that forced delegations to face each other from exposed positions, the subtle lighting that cast shadows across faces and made expressions difficult to read. Amateur hour. He'd seen the same tricks in corporate boardrooms and UN Security Council chambers. The galaxy, for all its advanced technology, apparently hadn't evolved past primate dominance displays. "The human delegation is recognized," a translated voice announced. The speaker was a Thesian, one of the species the Zyrak had nearly exterminated. Torres noted the symbolic weight of that choice. He stepped to the central platform. Around him, dozens of alien species watched with organs he couldn't always identify as eyes. "Thank you for receiving us," he began. His voice was calm, measured. "Humanity comes to this concord with a simple message. We seek peace, trade, and mutual understanding with all species willing to engage with us in good faith." A ripple of translated murmurs spread through the chamber. "We did not ask for the conflict that announced our presence to the galaxy. We did not seek war with the Zyrak Dominion. But when faced with invasion and extinction, we defended ourselves. We will always defend ourselves." He paused, letting the words settle. "However, defense is not our purpose. Humanity has spent its existence reaching outward, first across our world, then to our moon, then to our solar system. Now we reach toward the stars. We come not as conquerors but as neighbors. We hope to learn from the civilizations gathered here, and to share what we have learned in turn." The Zyrak delegation sat in rigid silence. Torres noted that their representative, a scarred veteran named Kothrix, had not taken his eyes off the human contingent since they'd entered. "The Concord recognizes the Velthari hegemony," the announcer declared. A figure rose from the far side of the chamber. The Velthari were tall and slender, their forms wrapped in robes that seemed to shift color with their movements. Their representative moved with the liquid grace of a species that had never known physical threat. "The hegemony welcomes humanity's peaceful intentions." The translation carried a note of skepticism. "But we are curious. Your species has existed for, by your own accounts, perhaps 300,000 years. In that time you never developed faster-than-light travel. You never detected the signals that permeate this galaxy. You remained confined to a single world." The Velthari spread their arms, a gesture Torres's implant interpreted as theatrical emphasis. "And yet, when the Zyrak arrived, you destroyed their fleet in minutes. With a single vessel. A vessel that our best analysts cannot explain." They turned to face Torres directly. "The hegemony's question is simple. Where did that ship come from?" Torres had expected this question. He'd prepared for it. But standing in the center of a galactic assembly, facing a species that had ruled the core worlds for millennia, the prepared answer felt inadequate. So he told the truth. "We built it." "From what knowledge?" "You had no access to galactic technology. We had access to debris. Signals. Mathematics." Torres smiled slightly. "And we had 10,000 years of practice solving problems that should have killed us. You expect us to believe that a species with no faster-than-light capability independently developed weapons that can penetrate Zyrak shields? I expect you to believe what your own analysts have confirmed, that the horizon exists and that it did what we say it did." Torres let his smile fade. "But since you've asked, I'll offer some context." He activated his personal display, projecting a holographic timeline into the chamber's center. "Humanity's recorded history spans roughly 6,000 years. In that time, we've fought approximately 15,000 wars. We've developed weapons capable of rendering our own planet uninhabitable, and then developed countermeasures, and then developed weapons to defeat those countermeasures, and so on, in an unbroken chain of escalation. The timeline filled with data points, conflicts, weapons developments, technological leaps driven by the desperate need to survive. We invented nuclear weapons in 1945. By 1960, we had enough to destroy our civilization several times over. By 1980, we had developed delivery systems that could reach any point on our planet in 30 minutes. By 2000, we were developing countermeasures that could intercept those delivery systems, and countermeasures to defeat the intercepts." Torres looked at the Velthari representative. "You ask where the horizon came from? It came from a species that has spent its entire existence preparing for the worst-case scenario. When we detected alien signals, we didn't assume they were friendly. We assumed they were threats because that's what our history taught us to expect." He deactivated the display. "We hoped we were wrong. We prepared as if we weren't." The Observer. Private Quarters, Kovaris, 7. Kothrix of the Zyrak Dominion did not sleep. He stood at the viewport of his assigned chamber, watching the station's external lights flicker against the void. Behind him, his aide, a young officer named Thesic, reviewed the day's diplomatic transcripts. "The humans made a favorable impression," Thesic reported. Preliminary polling suggests that 63% of Concord species view them positively. Another 20% are neutral. And the remaining 17%? Concerned. Primarily the hegemony and their client states. Kothrix's mandibles clicked softly. They should be concerned. We all should be. War Chief. I was there, Thesic. At the Battle of Earth. Kothrix turned from the viewport. The scars on his scales caught the dim light, souvenirs from the burning mandate's death. I saw what that ship could do. Our analysts believe the horizon represents the upper limit of human military capability. A prototype, perhaps. Our analysts are fools. Kothrix moved to the room's central table, where a holographic display showed the human delegation's public data. They assume the humans are like us. That they build their greatest weapons first and reveal them immediately. That their military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force. Is that not the logical approach? It is the Zyrak approach. It has served us for 4 millennia. Kothrix studied the human ambassador's face, an unremarkable arrangement of features by galactic standards. Soft skin. No natural armor. No claws or fangs. But the humans do not think like us. They do not think like anyone. He pulled up a file, recovered data from the battle, painstakingly reconstructed from the wreckage. The horizon did not engage us at maximum range. It did not announce its presence. It did not attempt to intimidate or negotiate. It waited until we were committed to our attack approach, and then it struck from a position we could not have predicted. Ambush tactics. Beyond ambush, the humans knew our battle doctrine, knew it well enough to exploit our assumptions. They had studied us, Thesic. For how long we cannot say. But when they finally revealed themselves, they did so in a way that maximized our confusion and minimized our ability to respond. Kothrix closed the display. The horizon is not a prototype. It is not the limit of their capability. It is a message. What message? That they chose to show us exactly what they wanted us to see. Nothing more. Kothrix returned to the viewport. The question that keeps me awake, Thesic, is simple. What are they hiding? Chapter 3, The Underground. Earth, former United States. Chicago Reconstruction Zone. Maria Santos had never seen an alien. She'd seen them on the feeds, of course. The diplomatic broadcasts, the carefully managed images of Ambassador Torres shaking appendages with beings from across the galaxy. But feeds were one thing. Reality was another. Reality was the construction crane outside her window, slowly rebuilding a skyline that had been evacuated when the Zyrak arrived. Reality was the food rationing that had only recently been lifted as global supply chains recovered from the panic. Reality was her daughter asking questions that Maria couldn't answer. Mom, are the aliens going to come back? Lucia was 7. She'd spent the last year of her life living in an underground shelter with 2,000 other families, waiting to see if humanity would survive first contact. I don't know, Mija. I hope not. But we beat them, right? The news said we beat them. Maria pulled her daughter close. We did. Some very brave people made sure we were safe. With the secret ship? Yes. With the secret ship. Lucia was quiet for a moment. Then, are there more secret ships? Maria looked out the window. The sky was clear. No alien armadas, no orbital bombardments, just the same blue expanse that had sheltered humanity for 300,000 years. I don't know, she said honestly. I hope so. What Maria didn't know, what almost no one on Earth knew, was that the answer was yes. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in facilities that didn't exist in any public record, construction continued. The TNS Defiance was nearly complete. Larger than the horizon with weapon systems refined based on data from the battle. Beside it, skeletal frameworks marked the beginnings of 3 more vessels, the Resolve, the Vigilance, and the Reckoning. And in a separate facility accessible only to personnel with clearances that didn't officially exist, something else was taking shape. Project Shepherd. Admiral Vasquez stood in the observation gallery, watching robotic arms assemble components that would have been science fiction 2 years ago. How long? She asked. Dr. James Okonkwo, now Director of Advanced Research, consulted his tablet. The orbital platforms will be operational in 18 months. Full defensive coverage in 3 years. And the secondary systems? The sensor network is already active. We're tracking every ship that enters the solar system. If the Zyrak, or anyone else, tries another approach, we'll know about it before they cross the Oort cloud. Vasquez nodded slowly. On the feeds, Ambassador Torres was shaking hands with alien diplomats, speaking of peace and cooperation. That was humanity's public face, Open, friendly, eager to join the galactic community. This was the other face. The face that remembered what it felt like to be prey. There's something else, Okonkwo said. The signals we've been intercepting from the hegemony, our cryptanalysis teams have made progress. And? They're scared, Admiral. The Velthari have held the galactic core for longer than most species have existed. They've never faced a challenge to their dominance. But the way we handled the Zyrak. He shook his head. They don't understand how we did it. And what they don't understand, they fear. Should they fear us? Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment. I think, he said finally, that they should fear what we might become. Humanity has never had access to real resources, the kind of resources that galactic civilizations take for granted. We've always been limited by our planet, our solar system, our technology. He gestured at the construction bay. Those limits are disappearing. In a generation, maybe two, we'll have colonies across multiple systems. Access to materials and energy that would have been unimaginable a century ago. And the same drive that pushed us to survive on Earth, the same paranoia, the same need to prepare for the worst, will push us to secure our position in the galaxy. Vasquez watched the robotic arms continue their work. You're saying we're dangerous. I'm saying we have the potential to be. The question is whether we choose to be. Okonkwo met her eyes. The Zyrak built their empire through conquest because that's all they knew. The hegemony maintained their dominance through economic control and subtle manipulation. Every galactic power has defined itself by how it treats those weaker than itself. And humanity? That's what the galaxy is waiting to find out. The test. 6 months later. Concord Station Kovaris, 7. The distress signal came from the edge of explored space. A Theshan colony, one of the few remaining settlements of the species the Zyrak had nearly destroyed, was under attack. Not by the Dominion, which was still bound by its armistice with Earth, but by something else. Raiders. Unaffiliated pirates who preyed on vulnerable settlements, knowing that no galactic power would waste resources defending refugees. The Concord has received the colony's request for assistance, the announcer declared. Standard protocol requires a vote on intervention. Ambassador Torres watched the delegations deliberate. He'd learned to read the room over the past months. The subtle shifts in posture, the exchanged glances, the carefully neutral expressions that masked calculations of self-interest. No one was going to help. The Theshans were a broken people, their homeworld destroyed, their population scattered. They had nothing to offer the major powers. No resources, no strategic value, no political leverage. Helping them would cost ships, personnel, and attention that could be directed elsewhere. The vote would fail. The colony would be destroyed. And the galaxy would continue as it always had. Unless Torres activated his communication implant. Admiral Vasquez, are you receiving this? Loud and clear, Ambassador. The Theshan colony at coordinates transmitted. Can you reach it? Pause. The horizon is in the sector. We could be there in 4 hours. Then I'm requesting deployment. Humanitarian intervention. Ambassador, that's not our mandate. We're here for Earth's defense, not. Admiral. Torres kept his voice steady, aware that the entire Concord was watching the human delegation. For the past year we've been telling the galaxy that we're different. That we're not conquerors. That we want peace and cooperation. He looked at the Theshan delegation. Their representative was slumped in their seat, already accepting the inevitable. This is our chance to prove it. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, understood, Ambassador. The horizon is en route. Chapter 5. The Arrival. Theshan Colony Refuge 7. Galactic Rim. Matriarch Silenes had lived through the fall of Thesha. She had watched her world burn, seen her people scattered across the stars, spent decades rebuilding what little they could salvage. The colony on Refuge 7 was supposed to be a new beginning, far from Zyrak space, hidden from the powers that had abandoned them. But the galaxy had found them anyway. The raider ships hung in orbit like carrion birds, their weapons already firing on the colony's meager defenses. Silenes stood in the shelter's command center, watching the tactical display update with each impact. Shields at 12%, her aide reported. Another hour at most. Evacuation status? 3,000 civilians in the underground bunkers. Another 2,000 couldn't reach the shelters in time. Silenes closed her eyes. She had seen this before, the methodical destruction, the inevitable end. Her people had survived Zyrak conquest only to die at the hands of nameless pirates in the empty reaches of space. We could surrender, her aide suggested quietly. Offer them? Offer them what? Our people? Our children? Silene shook her head. We have nothing they want. They're not here for resources. They're here because we're weak and attacking the weak is easy. The tactical display flickered. One of the orbital defense platforms went dark. Matriarch. Another aide was staring at her console. We're receiving a transmission. Unknown frequency. The raiders? No. The aide's voice caught. It's human. Silene's turned to the display. A text message translated into Theshan script. Refuge 7. Maintain defensive positions. Assistance incoming. ETA 23 minutes. That's impossible. The humans are days away from this sector. But even as she spoke, the tactical display updated again. A new contact, emerging from behind the system's outer planet. A single vessel, moving at speeds that shouldn't have been possible. The raiders saw it too. Their formation shifted, several ships breaking off to intercept the newcomer. The newcomer didn't slow down. What happened next would be analyzed by military scholars across the galaxy for decades. The Horizon entered the combat zone at velocities that would have torn any known vessel apart. It didn't decelerate, it shifted, somehow bleeding momentum without visible thrust, materializing in the midst of the raider formation like a predator appearing in a flock of prey. The first 3 raider ships died before they understood they were under attack. No warnings, no demands for surrender, just precise strikes that disabled engines and life support with surgical efficiency. The remaining raiders attempted to flee. The Horizon let them run for exactly 17 seconds, long enough for them to believe they might escape, before systematically disabling every vessel in the fleet. When it was over, not a single raider ship had been destroyed. Every crew was alive, their vessels drifting helplessly in the void. And the Horizon hung in orbit above Refuge 7, silent and still as if it had always been there. Concord Station Kovaris, 7. For hours later. The footage played on every display in the chamber. Ambassador Torres stood at the central platform watching the delegations react. The Zyrak contingent had gone very still. The hegemony representatives were engaged in rapid, whispered conversation. The Theshan delegate was openly weeping. The colony is secure, Torres announced when the footage ended. Humanitarian aid is en route. The raider crews have been transferred to Concord custody for prosecution under interstellar law. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Humanity did not ask for recognition. We did not ask for compensation. We did not negotiate terms or conditions. We saw a people in need and we responded. The Velthari representative rose. The hegemony acknowledges humanity's intervention. But we must ask, what does Earth expect in return? Torres smiled. Nothing. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Nothing? The Velthari pressed. No territory? No trade concessions? No political favors? Nothing. The Theshans needed help. We were able to provide it. That's the end of the transaction. Torres looked around the chamber. Humanity has spent its history learning hard lessons. One of the hardest was this. The measure of a civilization is not how it treats the powerful. It's how it treats those who have nothing to offer in return. He stepped back from the platform. We're not here to replace the Dominion. We're not here to challenge the hegemony. We're here to be what we wish the galaxy had been when we were alone and afraid. A neighbor who helps because helping is the right thing to do. Epilogue, the question. Earth Geneva. United Nations Extraterrestrial Affairs Council. Admiral Vasquez's report was classified at the highest level. But some information had a way of filtering through, whispers in corridors, encrypted messages between allies, the simple fact that the Horizon had returned to its hidden dock without firing a single lethal shot. They're calling it the Refuge 7 Doctrine, Director Morrison said, reviewing the intelligence summaries. The idea that humanity will defend the defenseless without expectation of reward. And the reaction? Mixed. The species that have been under the boot of the major powers are thrilled. The major powers themselves are. He searched for the right word. Unsettled. Unsettled how? They don't understand us, Helena. The Zyrak built their empire on fear. The hegemony built theirs on self-interest. Every galactic power operates on the assumption that everyone else is doing the same, that actions are driven by calculation, by profit, by advantage. Morrison set down the summaries. A species that helps others without expecting anything in return? That's not altruism to them. That's insanity. Or a trap they can't see. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, the Swiss Alps stood eternal and unmoved, as they had for millions of years before humanity existed. What if it's neither? What do you mean? What if it's just who we are? At our best, I mean. She turned from the window. We're not saints. We've done terrible things to each other, things that would horrify any civilized species. But we've also rushed into burning buildings to save strangers. Donated organs to people we've never met. Built hospitals in war zones and schools in disaster areas. She picked up one of the summaries, a report on galactic reactions to the Refuge 7 intervention. Maybe that's our advantage. Not our weapons or our ships or our paranoia. Maybe it's the fact that we're capable of both, the worst and the best, and we get to choose which one defines us. Morrison considered this. That's a nice philosophy, Admiral. But philosophy doesn't win wars. No, Vasquez agreed. But it might prevent them.